It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Welcome to another episode of Remodel Revolution. I'm your host, Alex Guthrie. We are broadcasting from deep in the heart of the great state of Texas, from the Remodel Revolution World Headquarters down in the dungeons, where it's the only place that they'll allow us to be. Welcome to the show. Today's show, we are going to have so much fun. I have today my co-host today, Miss Amber Teague. Hello, Miss Amber Teague.
Hello.
How are you doing? And I also have my friend of the show, Mr. Richard Miller with Richard Miller Construction. We're going to talk about Richard's unique way of building homes. And this is our series called The Creators. If you go to our website or our Facebook or YouTube, you'll see, in the podcast in particular, you'll see where we have a series called The Creators. And these are builders that build unique styles of houses. It's not the traditional way of building. And so we thought I thought it'd be a lot of fun to have these different people so you can get a different perspective on homes, how homes are built. First, today, we all want to just take a moment, and we want to take a moment of silence in honor of our country and the terrible tragedy that befell us 18 years ago. And if you'll just bear with us, we're just going to take a moment of solitude. Thank you so much for bearing with us. That was awesome. That was I know a long time ago, but it's still a very painful day in our history, and we all have our own stories. It's pretty amazing. Our first item on our list today is our remodeler's tip, and the remodeler's tip is: should you hire your own subcontractors if you're a homeowner, and why it's not a good idea. And first of all, I'm just going to tell you that I'm kind of biased. I think that if you have multiple subs, you need a manager, a project manager, or a contractor. You need somebody out there that understands how to manage these people. And I have a list of about, 7 or 8 things that I think are really critical. And I'm bringing this up today because I keep running into it. So I have YouTube and all of these platforms people go to, and they become experts, and they're not really experts, because a lot of the way Richard and I know how to do these things is through experience, good and bad. That's how we learn how to do this type of stuff. And so I want to suggest a few things for you to think about before you decide to become your own contractor and hire your own subs. I recently, just to give you a little history, I've talked quite a bit recently about a project that I just completed a few months ago where the homeowner decided to be his own contractor. And he was calling people on Craigslist, subcontractors on Craigslist, and it ended up being a pretty big mess. It cost him a lot of money. It took us 6 or 8 months to clean the mess up. We were redoing major things in this house. It was not a good situation.
Who still uses Craigslist? Let's just address that right now.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
And the scum of the earth uses Craigslist.
I'm
still.
telling you. Amber's on fire today. This is the second time. So number one, and I asked Richard and Amber to kind of chime in with me on this because I think we all have experience one way or another with this. They see you as a one-time customer. Now, when you hire, now I'm not talking about your plumber.
Right.
Like when you've had a relationship with a plumber, electrician, air conditioning person, then you can call them and depend on them,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But when you're doing a remodel and you're just getting random quotes, and you get subcontractors or vendors to work on your house, they see you as a one-time customer. And that's not always a good thing, because if you need them to come back, they don't care. And what happened to the guy I worked with, and I've seen happen to other homeowners, is they take off with their money. You know, they come in, they do a bad job, and then they call me and they go, there's this problem, and I go, well, we have to totally redo it.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you 3 times as much, and take 3-4 times longer.
Is that the difference? I mean, you guys obviously are on the other end of this. The difference between a contractor, a builder, and the title of handyman. People will hire the handyman at the that's on their card, and you don't want to hire a handyman.
Well, that's a great point. And I bring it up all the time. Just because he was really good, he or she was really good at doing a few little things around the house, doesn't mean they're going to be really good at remodeling your
Major
kitchen.
construction. Yeah.
It's one thing managing a $750 deal, but managing a $750,000 deal is a whole
Totally different.
Yeah, it totally is. Some of them will take advantage of your lack of knowledge. Now, this I find across the board happens, and you think you're making the right decision. You're consulting with this person for whatever part of the project you want them to do for you. Just say it's sheetrock, and you don't know if they're putting it up right. You don't know if they're doing enough prep work with it. You don't know if they're supposed to prime it. You don't know all these things. You're not supposed to, and so some of these people will take advantage of that to cut corners and kind of make more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was going to say, I've even heard of, you definitely want to do your homework, because I've even heard of, in my area, I live in the Bishop Arts area of Dallas, historic district over there, and there are some contractors going around having the homeowner create an LLC. The contractor actually doesn't have
Really?
a business, and then the homeowner is out if anything happens. The homeowner is the one who's
Liable.
yeah. And that's definitely not what you want to do.
Man, you're not kidding. Well, I've had people call me the last few years, younger people that call me, and they'll say that they want to buy everything. They want to pay for the materials. They want to pay the subs directly. All they want me to do is come out and manage the project. And my first question to them is, so are you going to call me when there's a problem? You don't want to pay me. You don't want to pay me my fee to do what I do. You want to cut me out of that. But if you have a problem, which undoubtedly you will, because you always do, are you going to call me and want me to stand behind it, or deal with the sub or the vendor, whatever it is? What's your experience with that?
So, home building is one of those things that it is definitely, managing home building is definitely a skill, but with HGTV and, and looking at framing and stuff like that, it's one of those things that homeowners think that I can think my way through this. I can reason my way through what's supposed to happen.
I've got a college degree.
Yeah, they don't say that. That doesn't happen with brain surgery, but with home building, it just seems easy enough where a homeowner thinks that they could. I'm smart. I can think my way through this. It's an expensive mistake.
Well, that's actually precisely what happened on this project I've been referring to. We call it the rescue house, because he's an engineer.
Nice. Yeah. So he's smart.
Smarter than everybody in the room.
Yeah.
Smartest guy on the site. Yeah. And he's an engineer, so he can figure it out.
Right. Yeah.
And then
how's that working for him?
I re-engineered it for him.
Yeah.
I will say, you're saying because HGTV, because of all these different things, that the pricing structure or what a contractor or even a designer does to price things out has changed. With the more knowledge that comes to the industry, then individuals know they could Google product and get the price. So if you're handing them the quote of 30% higher, they're going to question it. So more transparency is good. But so contractors and designers both, having that transparency up front is always better, and you want to look for that transparency up front. If they are getting a discount on the product, being the designer, are they being transparent about that? And as the homeowner, don't think that it's wrong for them to have a surcharge or an upcharge to that. It's very normal to have an upcharge. You're paying them for their time. And so if they are transparent about it, be upfront of, I understand that you're going to have an upcharge to this.
Hey, every time you buy a piece of bubble gum, there's an upcharge.
Yeah. It comes with the business. Yeah.
That's
so
part of the deal.
homeowners thinking they can go ahead and do it and skip that upcharge, that surcharge.
Yeah.
We've talked about before that these showrooms even will not give a homeowner the precedence that they would the contractor
No,
or designer.
no.
So the homeowner could be waiting 2 weeks to get a quote back, whereas a contractor could have got it in a couple of days.
Right.
Well, let's talk about a couple of other things here. One of the other reasons that you need to be really careful if you're going to hire somebody you don't know, and that is to make sure they have insurance, because it's really expensive when somebody gets injured, if someone gets injured, if somebody does something that creates a problem or a catastrophe in a home happens. You want to make sure they're insured, because guess what? If you call your homeowner's insurance and say, I hired so-and-so to do so-and-so and they burned down my kitchen, guess what your insurance company is going to say? It's on you.
It's on you.
You shouldn't have done that. You should have got someone with insurance. First thing that they're going to take. So be really careful with that. Do you know how to schedule? Now, this is the biggest problem in remodeling, is the schedule. And it doesn't matter how good you think it's going at the beginning of the job. When you get to the end of the job, you're behind schedule. That's just how it goes. And so you try your best. But if you don't know at the very beginning of the job, and you have multiple trades coming to your house, if you don't know how to properly schedule that project, you are going to get in deep, deep trouble with your schedule right at the very beginning.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Scheduling is, every trade has I know my trades. When my trades say, hey, this is I can get to this in 2 weeks. Well, that means something different for my tile guy and for my framer.
Right.
Maybe my tile guy, just from experience, I know that really means 3 weeks. For my framer, maybe he could get to it earlier. That experience is invaluable.
Yeah.
And if, and if you don't have that, then the project's going to go off the rails right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning, and you never catch up. So think about that. And then, who are you going to call if there's an issue? And I've already brought this up once. So who are you going to call? So if you hire your own people and they have it could be even a cosmetic type issue. It doesn't have to be catastrophic or anything like that. You've got to get it fixed, and if he doesn't see you as a return client, and maybe he don't like you, good luck getting him back. So be very careful. Be very careful with that. The next item that I've got, I wanted to talk about was, are you ready for winter? And I know it's still hot outside, and we're kind of getting into fall. Our days are getting a little shorter, but I wanted to bring up a few tips. We've got a couple of minutes here. We'll go over them real quick. If you see trees growing in your gutters, it might mean you need to clean them out.
Yeah. Homeowner maintenance.
If you have a squishy spot in your yard, it might mean you have a water leak.
No.
Unless it smells like poo, then you have a sewer leak. These are all things that you need to address before it gets really cold outside. If you find pieces of shingles in your yard, it might be time for a new roof. So call your insurance agency or agent, or call a roofer and find out. These, I'm bringing all these things up because these things happen over the summer, and the yard guy's cleaning the yard up. He's taking care of stuff. The sprinkler's been running, so this is when we find the sprinklers are leaking, or somebody stepped on something and broke a line. And
you have a really green yard. No one else does.
A real green spot in your yard, or you're walking through the yard and you sink up to your ankle in mud. That's never a good thing. If the dining room candles blow out and all the doors and windows are closed, it could mean that you have some air leaking around your windows. Like if they just flicker, it'd be a good time to go out and caulk around those doors and windows, get it ready for winter. So you don't have cold stuff blowing in. If you hear something making noise in your chimney, it's not Santa. It's too early for that. So if it has a furry tail, don't stick your hand up there because it's not a bird.
And they're running around right now, the squirrels.
So you
hiding.
might need a chimney sweep. That's my tips for getting ready for winter. A few short things that you need. These are things that we have to do every year, and it's really things you need to attend to right now. Don't wait until they say in 3 days a giant cold front's coming in. Do it now. Call somebody now. You have an incredible business that you've built. We're going to take a break in just a second for a minute and run a spot. But when we come back, we're going to start talking about advanced framing with Richard. Richard builds beautiful modern homes, and he uses a unique framing. It's really less unique as it used to be, but when he started it, it was very unique and very non-traditional. So when we come back from this break, we're going to talk to Richard about that. And we'll be right back. The hardest working and arguably most important system in our homes is our air conditioning and heating system. It heats the air, it cools the air, and it filters the air. That's why it's so critical to have it checked and maintained by the very best professionals available. It's time to contact Total Air and Heat at totalair.com. Get that system pruned and tuned. If you want to have the very best experience, you've got to hire the very best company. Total Air's employees are honest, well-trained, and thoroughly background checked. I never have to worry about sending their technicians out to my clients' homes. Family owned and operated for 3 generations, Total Air and Heat has been a fixture in North Dallas for over 60 years. Total Air is a proud dealer of the Trane air conditioning systems, and you know how hard it is to stop a Trane, so give them a call at 972-881-0020. That's 972-881-0020, or contact them at totalair.com today. So Richard Miller is Richard builds kind of modern, transitional. I'm sorry, gosh, you can't say the word traditional anymore, or man, people like her whack you on the head. So we don't like traditional. You use a system called advanced framing on the framing part of the house. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so I'm really into building science in general. I try to stay on the cutting edge of building science and high performance building. Advanced framing is actually the concept has been around for quite a while. I think about 50 years. It's also referred to as optimum value engineer framing, or optimum value framing. It accomplishes a couple of things. One thing that it does is it can reduce the amount of, it's green because it can reduce the amount of lumber in the house. It's also green because when you reduce the lumber in the walls, you have more space for insulation in the walls. So your insulation is better. And it can do other things such as help the windows, if they leak, to the outside. It's really just taking a intelligent approach to framing so that the house performs the best in the most optimum way, after the walls are up.
Well, and it's not random like traditional framing that we've been using for 50 years or so, where we stand a wall up, we have studs spaced evenly, and then we put ceiling joist on top of that, rafters on top of that, and everything's sort of randomly thrown together.
Right.
Well, what advanced framing does is it's a thought through approach.
It's a thought about process.
So every stud is structural.
Mm-hmm.
Every ceiling joist lines up with the stud. The rafter lines up with all of that. So you have a straight. Now, there's a process, and we're going to do a show on this soon, called fortified framing, and it's essentially the same thing. So everything comes down and has a purpose and shares in the load.
Yeah. So you think about how your structural loads are carried to reduce lumber, and you also think about how your headers are set.
Let's get a little less techie here. What's a header?
So a header is a beam that goes across the top of a window or a door. That supports the load down. Obviously, a window can't support a load, so it's
like a beam.
Yeah, it's a beam.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have headers that now the thing that you do different with a traditional header was the width of the wall, but your header is not.
Right.
Your header is a little skinnier. For what reason?
Yeah, so if you do a header the width of the wall, you've got an area that's that big that's just solid wood, and solid wood is not a good insulator. No. So what you do is you put a beam in, you put a piece of 2-inch insulation in, and then you put another beam on the other side, and it acts as a thermal break and gives you extra insulation.
So one of the ways that our homes heat up or cool down is thermal dynamics. And what that really means is that the heat outside goes through that wall or through those studs, whatever that member is, and it goes all the way through to the inside and affects the temperature in the house that you have to then cool or heat.
Right, yeah, it's called thermal bridging, and it's basically just means you've got a piece of wood that's on the exterior of the house that travels, that's thick and travels to the inside of the house, is transmitting a certain amount of energy and not insulating.
Right, and so doesn't sound that important until you realize how many pieces of wood there are doing that in a typical home.
Yeah.
And
So I was going to ask, what type of, when you're designing the home and designing where these are going to be placed, that's a very well thought out plan then. And once it's, for sure, if you're changing it, it's another well thought out plan after that. Yeah. So is that a benefit to getting a home with you? Is that your design team, your architect team is really well thought out?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of focus on, homes that, homeowners that like a well thought out house and well thought out details. When you walk up to the house, you're like, man, somebody's really put some time into figuring out how this is going to work.
Well, and you do that by focusing on the little details. But let's talk about a couple more things with this framing, because I think it's really interesting, and I think it's been, I think it's had a dynamic effect on how we're building houses now. We seem to be, we started around in the late 90s, and we started really focusing on energy consumption and energy efficiency in homes. And then we've started coding that, which we didn't have it coded before. We just said, insulate the house if you want to. And then we got to, well, you have to insulate the house. And that all really started with central air and heat, because that's the most biggest energy eater in your home is your air conditioning system, particularly here in the South. And so we started having to kind of code these houses. And what I mean by that is the building code requires that we have a certain amount of insulation, a certain type of window, where the glass has to have a certain insulation value, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I want to talk about the roofs on your houses. So Richard builds sort of a modern, some people call transitional. I don't know if you call the outside of it, or maybe you do. But when you're driving around and you see that in the last few years, the trend in housing has been these kind of contemporary looking houses, right?
Right. Houses with cleaner lines. And
there's a few things that over the years I've had to repair on houses with flat roofs.
Right.
And that's usually when I replace the flat roof with one that's not flat.
One that's not flat.
Because it's leaked all in the house, and it's created a nice big 2-story swimming pool. And but with all of this new kind of design that you're using, what are the best materials? I mean, certainly all that's improved.
Yeah, so my go-to material for flat roofs is TPO, which is it's just a very thick, sort of PVC-like membrane, right? And what we do before we put that on is we engineer the way that the water is going to get off of the roof quickly. So we build framing under, on top of the roof, but under the TPO that allows water to get off the roof quick. So the roof it looks flat from the street, but it's not actually flat.
It's got a little pitch to it, so you kind of disguise it so it looks flat. And TPO is an interesting product, because we've tried for years and years and years to find We burn stuff on the roof. We put tar and gravel. We do all these things that really came from the commercial industry when these architects would design these flat roofs. And then they call Alex and go, Alex, I've got this big mold problem because my roof has been leaking for 15 years and I didn't know it. And so we would end up having to replace it. And then I don't know when TPO got into the residential market, but it is a fantastic
It's great.
product.
Yeah.
It never leaks.
Never leaks, yeah. Yeah.
And it's actually the same kind of a liner that you could use in a shower, essentially. And so that really changes the whole dynamic of what you can do. It kind of opens up different avenues of how you can design and build a home, because one of the things that I've noticed the last few years is the products that we're getting lend themselves, if they're done right, to fewer issues than we used to have.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The advances in technology have given us high performance building products that really help out in the long run when it comes to problems such as leaks and things like that.
Yeah, little things like that. Yeah, right.
I've actually never had a call on a leak on a TPO roof.
Is that
Never.
right? Wow. I've got one right now that wasn't done right.
I should have called me.
It's not one of mine. It's one that I was asked to come in and fix, and
Gotcha.
the entire thing was done wrong.
It's
And
terrible.
it ain't pretty. And it ain't cheap. And so, but the whole problem was not the TPO. The problem was they tried to convert a traditional roof into a modern looking roof. And they created all kinds of places for water to come in because they did not plan it out properly.
Yeah.
And that guy is really not happy that he called that guy off Craigslist.
Yeah. Hire somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Well, so we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back after this. Sometimes it's a question of do I call or don't I call the foundation repair company? Well, what if I tell you that I know a foundation repair company that will tell you if you don't need foundation repair? That's right. Hargrave and Hargrave Foundation Repair has been in business for over 50 years, and they know the difference. One of the last family-owned foundation repair businesses in North Texas. Not only are they honest, they know what causes your foundation to move, and they know how to fix it. Don't be duped by fly-by-night foundation companies that provide shortcuts and messy fixes. Call Hargrave and Hargrave Foundation Repair at 972-442-3415. At the first sign of trouble, Hargrave uses the Chance helical pier system exclusively because it's the highest quality, most reliable helical pier money can buy. 972-442-3415 or contact them at hargravefoundation.com. I was in one of Richard's houses, and he played a really dirty trick on his client, and I just thought I needed to bring this up because it's important. He built a wine vault underneath the floor, right, like a basement. But because he's got sort of a sick sense of humor, when you walk into the kitchen, there's a big glass door in the floor that goes down. So when you walk in, you think you're going to fall in a hole into the wine cellar.
It's a cool wine room.
I didn't realize that was you, though, because I had seen that on social media, circulating around.
Yeah, it's a really cool wine room. Yeah.
So you do things like that. What are some of your favorite things people have had you do that are a little out of the ordinary?
Yeah, so wine rooms with glass, with glass tops in the floor is cool. We've done some safe rooms, which is pretty neat. We've done a master bedroom that we turned into a safe room, but you couldn't tell. I like those. I like specialty projects like that. I like projects that take some thinking and take some skill to execute. So
it's a lot
of fun.
It's real rewarding.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of fun. I had a client that was a big executive. This is in the 80s, and there was terrorists a threat. This guy was a CEO of Fortune 500 company, worldwide company, and they put a, whatever you call it, a contract out on this guy, and it was all over the news. And his wife called me and she goes, we need a safe room like now. Well, back then, of course, we had to go in and just reinvent it. We had to invent it right there, not reinvent it, just invent it right there on the spot.
Right.
And we didn't know. We were just stacking plywood up on the walls and hoping it'd stop a
Throw
bullet.
some more lumber in there, yeah.
So it's pretty cool when they're designed and you can do that type of thing. So what kind of, let's talk about that safe room. What kind of features can you put in a safe room like that?
Well, I mean, we obviously, because in our area, we try to make them tornado rooms as well. So, you can do, you can do generators that do separate utilities to them if you need to, make them. There's actually a way to do it. You can do it with steel, but there's actually a way to do a safe room out of lumber that's approved for tornadoes. So.
I actually looked into that for a client, and it was real interesting. So I want to tell you that this is a great subject. I hadn't planned on talking about this today, but I think this is a really great thing, especially this time of year.
Right.
But if you're going to build a safe room, you don't undercut it and build a room that's not going to perform the way you want it to perform, or you're going to put yourself in a more dangerous situation by thinking that you're safe. And so some of the things that I've done in the past on safe rooms is, like Richard said, you have to use plywood. Don't use OSB, chipboard, stuff like that. Don't go cheap. You have to get real plywood, tongue and groove, 3/4 inch exterior grade plywood. It's tough as nails. And you have to put a couple of layers of it.
One running one way and one
running the other. Because what's it got to withstand?
I don't remember the exact values it's got to withstand.
It's got to withstand
a tornado.
110 mile an hour 2x4.
Yeah.
So what you design it to withstand. But it's not only the walls that you're dealing with. You're dealing with the ceiling as well, because things fall down on you. And so you have to reinforce the ceiling. So it's a real challenge getting in there. Now, in a new house, it's one thing, but in an old house, going in and reinforcing it, that was real challenging.
Yeah, that's
and I think it's something that we're thinking of more and more, because me and my family just lived through the one on Christmas Day in Rowlett.
Oh, really?
The category, I think at first they believed it was a 5, and I think it went down to a 4. But it was very scary.
Yeah.
And there was neighbors' houses that were gone.
Yeah.
Just gone. So it's something that, like Rowlett, we never thought that it was going to be there. And very close up in Wiley and Frisco and Plano, we're never in the clear. And that same day where the tornado hit Rowlett, it was actually scheduled. They were saying it was going to hit downtown Dallas and North Park and North Dallas in that area. And then it went over to the east of Dallas County. So it can be here. It can hit any of us. So
no, they're real unpredictable. It's really great to plan for that. And I'm sorry I got so far off subject, but I thought that was interesting. One of the things I wanted to talk to Richard about is when he's doing this advanced framing, one of the big benefits we briefly touched on a few minutes ago is the insulation. And we talked about the beams over the windows and doors, how you can insulate them. But one of the primary places that you leak air in your house is the corners. And I know it sounds kind of trite. You're like, so what? But it's important. It has a huge effect on your comfort, on the dust, that you're finding on your, all that stuff often is air leakage. So what do you do on these houses to deal with the air leakage in traditional around corners, doors, windows, things like that?
Yeah, so I typically use a 2 or 3 stud corner. So typically in a corner, you'll just have a stack of studs there. And that whole corner has no insulation in it.
Solid wood.
So if you do a 2 or a 3 stud corner, you can actually slip insulation into the corner so that there's either no or less thermal bridging there. Other things like ladder walls, so that usually where walls intersect, the interior walls intersect exterior walls, so it's just a stack of studs. If you do a ladder wall, you can put insulation behind there. It's just as structurally sound.
And the other thing is, let's talk briefly about the difference between the foam and the batt insulation, because your houses, you foam.
I do a lot of foam, yeah. Yeah.
And what is the difference that you find between batting and this is the typical insulation that you see in a house, and it's got a paper on it, and it's stapled to the studs, and it's pink, versus where you go in and you spray a foam and that baby's tight.
Yeah, it's very difficult to install bad insulation where it has any appreciable effect on stopping air infiltration.
Which isn't really it's not really its job.
Yeah, but if you foam a house, you get if you use open cell foam, you get an air sealing benefit as well as a good insulation benefit.
So if you foam the walls, and then you can foam the attics where you're controlling the air in the attic.
Makes the attics cooler.
Makes the attics cooler, but then all of now this is where this new building science comes in, because when you do all these things, everything has an effect on the next thing. So if you foam your attic, you foam your walls, then you have to make sure that the air conditioning system, the equipment that goes in there, is able to function properly in a sealed space. Traditionally, they're not. So if you just go and buy a regular, what's the efficiency of
What's
them?
it, 80 or 85% furnace?
Yeah.
And then 95% is what we typically use. Yeah.
And that just means it uses less air to operate, or it's directly vented outside.
Right.
So it doesn't release off-gassing into that space. And because there's no air in that space, it's got to get its air from either direct venting or something like that.
Yeah. We call it build right, build tight, but ventilate right. So when you start sealing up a house in a serious way, you've got to allow for a way for fresh air, the right amount of fresh air to get in to maintain a healthy environment. Yeah, for sure.
Well, in upcoming shows, we'll be talking, particularly next week, we're going to be talking to a friend of ours next week that builds with ICF blocks. And just like Richard's houses, his houses are super, super airtight. And one of the things that we have to talk about when we are on the subject is air quality, because Richard builds a house that's so tight that if you sneeze at one end of the house, it goes all the way to the other end of the house.
That's funny.
And so we have to control that air quality. So, well, that was fantastic. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for
That was a
having
great conversation. We're not done. Now, this portion of the show is the Amber Teague show. 'Cause I asked Amber to talk to us today about some new products that are coming out, because this is what Amber does. And she has a showroom, and she reps different products. And Amber told me she's got all kinds of new stuff that she thinks is super exciting.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about some trends that we're seeing, and Richard can too if he wants to pipe in. So in preparation of this, I contacted both showroom personnel and CEOs of brands and kind of asked them what are the trends. I also went to the Kitchen and Bath show this year, so kind of seeing what's coming up, what we're seeing continuing. So definitely in kitchen and bath is some more modern, as Richard's doing. There's more modern coming into the Texas market, and what people consider modern or transitional changes compared to who you ask. But definitely,
What's the difference? But what's the difference between transitional and modern?
Well, what do you think, Richard?
Yeah, so modern is very clean lines with not too much traditional house look. Transitional.
What's traditional? You mean like baseboards,
Yeah,
casing around
well,
the windows?
Yeah, it's pitched roof lines and things like that. Transitional is basically takes the basic lines of a traditional house and adds and cleans the lines up, but it's still, the outline of the house looks pretty traditional.
Yeah, like what we've seen if you're driving around Dallas, a lot of the times to upgrade or update a Mediterranean look is to change the window framing and the roof and make it white instead of cream, and that
Right.
kind of, that would be more transitional because you're changing just
Stucco
the,
instead of brick,
yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So that's definitely the trend moving forward. But as far as interior, a darker kitchen, darker palettes are coming in more compared to the white that we've been seeing.
So what we've been
much.
doing for the last few years is we've been stuck on white cabinets around the edge of the kitchen and a different color island. Or we
yeah.
might do, and I'm not saying I hate all
It's
this.
still gonna be
I'm
there,
just saying
yeah.
I'm bored with it. So you
Everyone
have
is.
white
Every
cabinets
single person.
upper, colored cabinets lower, and
Yeah.
everybody has the same cabinet doors. Everybody wants shaker doors
Yeah.
because that's the word this year. Shaker.
Shaker, shaker, shaker.
Has been for years.
So in the design community, more of your high-end interior designers will have always have this darker, moody color palette, but that's really coming into being more accessible for everyone now, especially with wallpaper is coming back of different patterns that are darker and moody, especially for powder baths.
Moody.
Moody, yeah. I'm a big fan of it. If you see my website, a lot of the brands I choose, and
So you
I
like
like
that
this.
dark, that you like that,
Yes.
you're a romantic.
Yeah, well, I like my Achilles heel is a industrial loft that's really cool and
Richard's
moody.
not
yeah.
Richard's not a romantic. He likes bright colors.
It's just what I'm drawn to. So I am a really big fan of what's coming up next after this whole white craze. So Unlacquered finishes, of course, my company is named Unlacquered Agency, so I'm a fan of this too. But the Unlacquered brass isn't going anywhere, especially if you're more of a traditional person. You're liking the traditional faucets and lighting and hardware, door hardware. So Unlacquered brass isn't going anywhere soon. And copper too, if you're wanting to do a little bit different from brass.
That's like a timeless finish,
Yeah.
you know. But,
That's why it's traditional, is that,
was-
it's not going to go anywhere.
it was all
Yeah.
about trying to simulate old brass fixtures that we
Yes,
put in
yeah.
the 40s and 50s, and
Right.
they aged, got patina and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's just make them patina.
Yeah.
That's what we're.
So the difference, though, is that they'll probably be doing brass, but in a modern look, the modern design of it. But I wouldn't be surprised if I kind of like this too. Is mixing modern aesthetic with a very traditional faucet.
I think it's a beautiful combination.
A very traditional, maybe bridge faucet, or even, believe it or not, some of the what is it, Swan or
No, no more swans. No more swans.
no more swans.
No, I made a lot of
let's
good
keep
money
the
cashing
finish.
those swans in, at the
Oh
scrapyard.
yeah. So let's keep the finish, but not the look. Is that the consensus?
Well, you know what I like about the new? It's not just the finish. It's the efficiency's better. They have new. There's actually, with hardware or plumbing fixtures in particular, there's like touchless, and there's all these cool things. So it's not just the look.
Yeah. So outside of plumbing, think of just kitchens in general. A big trend now is the manufactured countertops, or synthetic man-made, however you want to describe it. There are big brands emerging out of this. Other than, and when I say that, it's other than your marble or granite. Synthetic would be, or man-made, would be Cambria stone, Kedra. Different companies are coming out of this, and it's very, very popular. And
Why?
why is it popular?
Why is it
How about let's
popular?
ask Richard? Why is it popular? Do you think?
Probably a little less expensive.
Less expensive.
And it performs probably better than a natural stone as far as with
Yeah.
day to day.
Yeah, no, the staining isn't there, the scratching. Also, as a design, and if you're just looking at it as design, it's very consistent on pattern, because you go from slab to slab in granite or marble, and you get a different color.
Well, one of the trends that they're doing, we've been doing in kitchens, when you're talking about pattern, it's these waterfalls. We call it a waterfall, but it's where the countertop just falls right off the end of the cabinet, goes down to the floor, and it's critical that pattern look right for that to be a successful look.
Yeah, and not to diss any fabricators, but sometimes some things happen and there's a mistake. And if there's not another slab,
A dummy did it.
Yeah, but
That's the mistake.
if your kitchen requires 2 slabs and one of them there was a mistake, and then you can't get that pattern again, the benefit of using a manufactured countertop is you can get that pattern and it's going to match. So that's going to continue to go. They're using them in bathrooms too, for the walls, and that your wall will be a one whole slab, a pattern, and the holes for the valves there, and then it's beautiful.
And we've been doing that for years with different kinds of products, but these products are just a lot better. I mean, the products we were using in the past were sort of iffy for doing where we would build a shower out of them, and we've been doing that. But I will say this. Nothing will ever beat out natural stone look-wise. They can't do it. They can't do it.
But I think the more we use it, the more the technology is there. I think patterns are going to continue to expand.
Oh no, it's
better,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's beautiful stuff. And the thing that I really like about it is that the manufacturers and all types of materials that we're using, flooring materials, countertop, tile, they can make it look like it's natural, where unless you're a trained eye, you don't know. I mean, people walk in, they go, God, that is beautiful marble. No, it's not.
And the commercial industry has been doing this for a long time, tricking the eye and figuring out how to get around the cost of some of the more natural products. So just to wrap it up, I also want to talk a little bit about cabinets too. We talked a little bit about the white going out, but the natural wood is coming back in, and how to do that to where it's not super dark. That 1990s really light wood is coming back, but in a more designed way of not. You can kind of talk about this.
I'm feeling the love here.
Yeah.
It's coming. You know, it's just kind of like these shorts I'm wearing.
Yeah.
That I bought in 1985. They're now.
A good example of this, and customers, if you're just going through the design district, figure out what showroom has been remodeled most recently. What has the newest products in? A brand new showroom that just opened up. I went to an event there, was Cantoni showroom, Cantoni to the Trade, I think is what it's called in the design district. You can walk in and ask to look around. Their whole showroom is different shades of brown, which can kind of be cringeworthy for it kind of be cringeworthy for early 2000s brown, but no, there is a beautiful design where I looked at brown, the natural tones, neutral, in a different way, and
their cabinets.
Yeah, and their cabinets and their paint and all the different textures and products. Going from just seeing everything as stark white to now look at it more of textures and natural
and movement in them, and that's what I'm missing, because I like that movement that you have in natural wood. I really appreciate you doing all your homework. You did so good. You did
all
so
last
good.
night. He contacted me last minute to co-host with him.
Yeah,
and that's the relationship we have here.
That's right.
Just
that's
jump
right.
in.
Well, I really appreciate you doing
Thank
that
you.
for me, and it's been so fun and educational. Richard, I really appreciate you being here today.
Our pleasure.
It's really been a lot of fun, and we learned an awful lot. Next week, we're going to have our friend of the show, Alan Hoffman, on part 2 of the creators. Now, I will say this: it should have been part 3. But Richard's friend, Matt Mitchell, who I don't like calling out publicly, but I will, did show up last week.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so.
He'll have to come back
We'll
now.
see you soon, Matt. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ziggy Becker, our engineer. He's the man in charge of all the screen, and he's just awesome at what he does. Thank you on-air media for letting us be in this facility. We love it so much. Thank you to all of our listeners, and particularly thank you to all of our sponsors for keeping us on the air and believing in what we're doing. Thank you so much. This is Alex Guthrie signing off. We'll see you next week.
You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, RemodelRevolutionRadio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle @Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. And watch the show anytime on YouTube.